Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Shoe Snob One Take Wonder videos. Here we are back again in a little bit more casual setting in my lovely small apartment here in Manhattan, New York. So, I wanted to try to get into things other than unboxing videos and thought I would start off with a subject that is, how to put this, I don't know, deep. Deep? No, it's true to my heart. It's about the misconceptions and the misuse of terminology and basically the lies that go on in the shoe industry that I've been trying to battle my whole time as the shoe snob or whatever you want to call me. Um, and it's a subject that I've written about, but I just feel like you can't talk enough about it because there are constant misuses of it, and it doesn't seem to ever stop. So it's like an unending battle, but I don't mind battling it on a regular basis because I feel that the only way to truly change things is through education, and I think this education is important. So the subject is, what is a handmade shoe? So my problem with the shoe industry today is that many people are just throwing this term around constantly. The amount of people that say, "Oh, I have handmade shoes and blah blah blah," and they bought it for $300 at Nordstrom or wherever, some department store, and they think they're shoes because they're made in Italy, and Italians put fatte a mano everywhere, handmade this, handmade that, that they have handmade shoes when really they don't. They have a factory made shoe made in a factory, made by machines with people that know how to work the machines. That's not handmade. I don't even know how people can understand that that's not handmade because the machine does the work. The men or women or whoever's working in the machine simply guide the shoe. That simple. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Prior to there being machines, things were handmade. Of course, if there were no machines, how else did they construct them? They constructed them by hand with handmade hand tools like knives and hammers and stitching and etc. and etc. and nails and yada yada yada. This is where term handmade came from, clearly, because everything back then was handmade. It had to be, because the industrial revolution hadn't started yet and things weren't being done in a fast pace and sold internationally, and done in a production line. So as time goes on, machines come about, the factory industry grows. Of course, this term doesn't disappear because it has a ring to it. Handmade. Wow, it was made by hand. It's extra super high quality. This, that, and people are smart. That's what marketing is. It's about essentially it's about manipulating people's emotions in order to buy something, and using strong, intelligent, emotional grabbing terminology is a huge part of marketing. So brands, big companies, they know this. They know how to pull the strings of the people in order to buy their product. So handmade, the word, the idea, kept going and going and going and going and going. Now, even though there were factories, and they had machines, a lot of them still did many of the processes by hand. But as the world gets more intelligent with technology, machines get smarter and smarter, or the creation or the uses of them get more high tech and intelligent, and you have machines that can cut hides in 30 different patterns in split seconds. The idea of the handmade really gets further and further from the truth, in essence. But the term is still thrown around like it's nothing. It pretty much doesn't mean anything anymore because almost every shoe is referred to as handmade now when it's really not. So, in my opinion, because I've actually made a shoe by hand, and I'm not even gonna lie, I've never made an entire shoe by hand, because where I learned was Stefano Bemmer. They were using heel blocks to stack the heel. Now, if you really want to talk to a bespoke shoemaker who's snobby like me, they'll say that's not handmade, because a true bespoke shoe is the heel is stacked leather layer by leather layer, and that takes a lot of skill and it takes time. And that's part of the difference between a true handmade shoe and a semi or rushed handmade shoe. So I've made shoes by hand the Italian way, I guess. Not all Italians make. I'm sure there are makers that stack by hand, the ones that are more traditional, excuse me. And so, I feel like when you've never actually done it, when you never put those blood, sweat, tears, whatever, that hard work, because making shoes is not an easy thing. It's not easy by any means. Your hands get destroyed, you get cut, they get dirty, it's hard to clean. All the thread just destroys your fingers. Your nails are nasty. You get cut by your knife, you hammer your fingers. It's a lot of work, and it's not easy work. It takes away when people that go through that process, that studying, that life that they sacrifice to go train to be a bespoke shoemaker. I feel like when some, excuse me, jackass just says my shoes are handmade that they bought for $300, it's like a slap in the face to that guy or that girl or whoever that person is that went and put lifetime into learning the process of what a real handmade shoe is. And I can't stand it. I can't stand that people just throw this term around. And I feel like they do it even if they know it's a lie. They just like to sound like their shoes are better than they really are for the sake of ego boosting, which is ridiculous in my opinion as well. And so, yeah, I can't stress this enough. I can't stress that none of these shoes that you're buying are handmade. Hand welted is not handmade. Let me say it again. Hand welted is not handmade. Getting your shoe up to the welted process is only half the battle. That's not the full battle. There's a lot of other steps after that to be done by hand that actually make the shoe what it is. The Japanese are regarded a lot of times as some of the best shoes because they're the expert finishers. That's the last part of the process, finishing the shoe. And they're the ones that put all those tweaks into it by hand. So when you get a hand welted shoe made out of China or East Asia or wherever, Hungary and Romania, from St. Crispin, well, St. Crispin's is somewhat of an exception, but when you get a hand welted shoe and it was all finished by machine and the sole was put on by machine, that's not handmade. That's hand lasted, which is great. It's a respectable term, but it's not handmade. Handmade, made by hand, no machine. That's simple. No skipping, no quick steps, none of that. That's all fake stuff. That's all semi-handmade, part handmade, but not fully handmade, and therefore should not have the term handmade next to it. So, there's the argument. Whoa, oh, but nobody sews the upper by hand. So is any shoe really handmade? I mean, okay, if you really want to get technical, no shoe is really handmade. There are makers that can sew by the upper by hand, but it's a relevant process. It would double the price of the shoe. It's a tedious, difficult. I'm maybe somebody who I know would argue with me if a hand could do it better, but I don't think hands do it better than a machine in this regard, and has been widely accepted since the dawn of time. I don't know when the sewing machine came out, definitely far sooner than Goodyear welting machines and the like, but it's been widely regarded that the sewing machine is an acceptable part of the handmade shoe process of doing the pattern, of doing the upper together, because it just doesn't make sense to do it by hand. The bespoke shoes would be double, triple the price, and it's just not as it's very, very difficult to make it that small and that tight and that pretty like the machine does with a good sewer. Anyway, so technically, if somebody wants to argue with me on that point, yeah, okay, you won that battle. No shoe is really handmade, because then nobody could afford a handmade shoe. That would, it's just the way it goes. Cost of labor would just be through the roof. So, but if we're talking about what is an acceptable handmade shoe, and now if you just want to ask Joe Blow on the street, he probably thinks it's acceptable to say his Italian shoes that cost $300 handmade. If you want to go ask bespoke shoemaker what's acceptable to be using the term handmade, they're probably going to say, well, what I go through, doing each part of the process by hand with the exception of the upper, and stacking those heel blocks. Everything is done by hand. No cheat sheets, no using a trim wheel, a sanding machine, none of that. You know how you how you clean up the sides of a sole, of an edge of a bespoke sole with broken glass? No sanding. broken glass. So, and then sandpaper by hand. So, and then you use wax to make it shiny. So none of those things are happening in a hand welted factory made shoe. No, no, machines are doing these parts of the process. Sure, they last it by hand, they welt it by hand. Great, that's a respectable job. That's a great. It's nice to have those features, but don't mistake that for handmade. Get it out of your head that your store-bought shoes at the local department store, or even at your high-end menswear atelier, are selling handmade stuff, because they're not. Most handmade makers are very small, and they're selling direct because it's actually very difficult to scale handmade shoemaking. It's a painstaking process that takes a lot of time. So you don't find many handmade shoes because it's a luxury thing in reality. It's not a scalable business. It's not a production business. So you have your Vass, you have your St. Crispin, and there, Vass has been. I've never been to the factory, but people I trust say they're handmade, so I'm not going to say that they're lying. Yeah, I find it amazing how low their prices are, but that's probably why they're as small as they are and will never grow, because they're probably undercutting themselves in order to make sales, which is a shame, because then they can't do a strong business, and they will forever stay at that size unless it's hard to find people who have the skills to make by hand. It's not an easy thing. Same with St. Crispin's. They can only make up to a certain degree, and they do about 95% of the process by hand, and then they have an old school like spin machine to put the sole on. And again, I've talked to Philip, and it's very hard to find makers that can do this work. It's not easy work. So, I think part of the reason that I dislike this word so much is because I just feel like it takes away from the people that are actually doing the work that's challenging, the work that they put years into their life to study, the work that deserves credit, and not to just be thrown around with a term to make some ego-minded person feel good about themselves. And in theory, it's silly, because how can you really think that your $300 shoes are handmade? Simple mathematics will tell you that they're not. So anyway, stop using the word handmade. It's an illusion that you feel better about it. When people ask you, are your shoes handmade? Say no, they're made in a factory, because that's the truth. And the truth is always better than some lie. So let's start telling the truth. Your shoes are not handmade. Very unlikely. Very, very unlikely. Hand welted is not handmade. I will say that to the day I die. Hand welted is not handmade. It's only starting to be kind of accepted like that again, so people feel better about their purchase, so brands can use small little details to sell their products, small little changes of word. But it's not. Let's tell it how it is in reality. Handmade is when a shoe is made entirely by hand, with the exception of the upper being sewn by the sewing machine. That's handmade. Anyway, I got a lot of subjects that I'm passionate about, and you know what? I don't always have the time to be getting on the keyboard now and typing out 4 hours worth of stuff. A 14-minute video would have taken me 2 hours to write, and time is of the essence these days. And so I'm going to try to get on here and kind of do these more like just talking one with all of you videos, and talking about things that I've learned across the industry and during my time. Sharing the knowledge that I have with everything that I've done, everything that I've seen, everybody I've talked to, and all the research and whatnot. Yeah, in the hopes to really help, help the shoe industry, because I feel it needs help. I feel we've gotten to a strange place where there's just too much misinformation, too many unrealistic expectations, and while the customers are laughing because there are companies that just do whatever they want and keep bowing down and making the clients happy, and then they have expectations from bigger companies like Amazon. It's actually in reality hurting the shoe industry, because the good shoemakers or the honest ones are suffering because they don't acquiesce to this type of behavior, and then they don't get their products sold because there's too much expectation, there's too many lies, there's too many fake things going on, that people are judging one brand to the next, and because the one brand tells the truth and the other one's lying, the people are believing the lie of the crappy brand and not buying the actual better brand. They learn in the long run when their crappy shoes fall apart that were handmade, but in the short run they don't. And in this day and age, in a difficult year we've all had, there's no telling if so many people buy that lying crappy brand and don't buy the good one, if that good one stays alive. And a lot of the good brands out there, I know the owners and they're my friends, and I want to see them strong. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I got to bring a bit back more of my snobbiness. Sorry, I just don't have time to write like I used to. Now that I'm running my own shoe company, have children, I'm getting older, responsibilities are difficult, it's just not enough hours in the day. Tons of emails, tons of things to do. So I'm going to try to do more video because I just don't have the time to write like I used to. But everybody seems to like video these days, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Sorry if I'm not all smiley with a nice expression, but this is a passionate subject that I feel there's nothing to smile about, because it's something that's not good going on, and I want to change it. I really want to help educate people. If you have a question, feel free to drop it. If you do enjoy these videos, feel free to please subscribe, like, share, do whatever. I know that a lot of these new YouTubers have this whole spiel that they say, but spread information. That's how we all get smarter, is spreading good information, education. Yeah, and be careful next time you're thinking about using the term handmade. Think about what it truly means. Think about the people that are really making the shoes by hand and what it takes for them to actually do that. Appreciate their craft and their sacrifice to actually offer the shoes that are truly handmade in the industry, and not just the ones that throw around that term like it means nothing. So anyway, thanks again for your support. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.